Um, this is the last one that we're going to have, and I thank you all for coming out. There are cards in the back that you can fill out a question and get them up here to Ann Harriman. Well, first off, I want to begin with Lee Hurd Tucker, running for post 1, and Dilip Tunke. Okay, I want to thank both of them for coming out and giving us of their time. And the star of Medlock Bridge is Ann Harriman, because without her we'd be lost. And I thank you very much. So just turn off your ringers on your phones and take it away, Ann.
All right, good evening. Thank you all for coming yet again. This is the last of the series of debates that Tom has organised. The format, for those who don't know, we give each of the candidates a 5-minute introduction, and then I will read out the questions. The questions came in either through email or cards that were written. Sometimes there are similar questions, so I'll combine them, and I'll flip-flop who goes first to answer. So, Dilip, if you would like to do a 5-minute introduction.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, this is better. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Medlock Bridge, for hosting this, and the residents for coming out and hearing us out. My name is Dilip Tunke. I'm a resident of Johns Creek for over 20 years. I'm married to Padma for 25 years, and we have a daughter, Sindhu. She graduated from Chattahoochee High School. She's currently junior at UGA, the best football team. I'm actively involved in the city of Johns Creek from 2006. I currently serve on Town Center Advisory Committee, Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee, Johns Creek Arts Center, Artery Mill Nature Preserve, and Johns Creek Cricket Association. Apart from these, I mentor 3 to 4 small business owners every week through SCORE in the North Fulton area. It's an affiliate of Small Business Administration. Prior to these, I served on Construction Board of Appeals, Chattahoochee School Governance Council, where I was instrumental in bringing a greenhouse, $400,000 greenhouse to the school. And I also serve on Shelter of Love, a non-profit, an advocate against domestic violence victims. We provide care packages for the victims while they are in the shelter in the transition period. We service Fulton, Cobb, and DeKalb counties. I'm a graduate of student leadership in Leadership Johns Creek. It's a best program. Nicole, right? Yes, there you go. And a graduate of Citizens Fire Academy, Citizens Police Academy. Coming to my education, I have a bachelor's in civil engineering, master's in environmental engineering, and an MBA in finance from Georgia State University. Professionally, I started my career in the civil engineering, construction in the commercial buildings, and then I transitioned into environmental engineering after my master's. I worked in Texas and Louisiana with EPA, Department of Natural Resources, and the Department of Environmental Quality. Most of 1990s I worked in that area. My primary focus was wastewater treatment plant designs, stormwater, basically more onto the retention ponds and detention ponds, then landfill designs, and then air pollution equipment design. So from there on I transitioned into a small business owner, been that way for the last 23 years. My primary focus is information technology staffing, but again I ventured into restaurant business, retail, and the real estate side. Coming to my hobbies, I am a nature lover. I run half marathons, play tennis. I did few big hikes. I hiked Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania and Mount Everest Base Camp. Haven't done much in the last 2 years, waiting for 2022 to get started again. Coming to the vision for the city of Johns Creek, there's a reason we all are residents of Johns Creek or moved into Johns Creek, the best schools, safest city, and the quality of life, the parks. And we created all that and became the richest city in Georgia. So I want to work on protecting that character and build on it into the future. Drawing into my education, experience, knowledge, leadership skills, and the community involvement, I can make informed decisions for the city and guide them and prepare them for the coming years. We have a lot of good projects in the pipeline: town center, stormwater, parks, transportation. My background in the environmental engineering will help me make the right decisions for the stormwater utility fee they already put in there, and also work on finding the supplemental funding so that we can expedite the process. So you have a candidate who has an experience and who is involved in the city of Johns Creek, who's been your neighbor for 21 years. I would definitely want to represent you. Please do vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee, if you'd like to do a 5-minute.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, guys. Thank you to Tom and Ann for putting this on, and for all of you guys for coming out, because obviously this means you guys are active and engaged in trying to find out what's happening with this community. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is LaWanna Hurd Tucker. All of my friends call me Lee, so can you. I am originally from Arkansas, so I am a country girl to my heart. I moved to Georgia, I think in 2001. Have been here all that time, been in Fulton County. I come from a military family, so I'm no stranger to hard work and dedication and effort. Actually, I got my first job when I was 12 because a little girl who was in my classroom, Dana, she and her family were actually squatting in the house 3 doors down from us. And so it broke my heart to see that her family was struggling to try to figure out how to make ends meet. And so I asked my mom if it was okay for me to go down to Pizza Hut every day after school. And I got a job folding boxes of all things. And every day I'd fold the boxes from the top of the wall all the way down, and they would, pay me in food. And so I would take it to her family every night so that they could eat. And so that was kind of how I started my involvement in community service. And I've always been dedicated to service. And it's always been about service for me. It's never been about, doing things that make me look good, things to build my resume. It's never been self-serving for me. So when I moved to Georgia, I immediately got involved. I went to University of Arkansas for my undergraduate. I did my master's. I finished it up at Oxford in England. I truly recommend that if you don't allow your kids to study abroad, please do, because Oxford in England was amazing. So definitely study abroad. Let your kids do that if you have the opportunity. But it really gave me a lot of opportunity to expand my horizon, because a little girl from Arkansas that had never been exposed to a whole lot of things, it really gave me an opportunity to see what else was out there. And so, again, I moved to Georgia, super excited about being in a big city. And so I got involved. And that's the one thing about me, is that I don't think it takes being in a community a long time to get involved. And I don't think that you have to live in a community to get involved and to care about that community. And so I am also the mom to the most amazing 6-year-old campaign manager. And as I told y'all last debate, I pay her in juice box and cookies. But the fee continues to go up every single week. So I'm trying to figure out a way to, dial that back some. But I've been a resident of Johns Creek since 2020. I moved during the pandemic. Yes, I know who moves during the pandemic, but I was getting stir crazy in my smaller house in Atlanta. So I moved to Johns Creek. And by trade, I am a business executive in healthcare. And so I've got 60 plus employees, and I manage a multi-million-dollar budget. So it is very cumbersome. But I spend most of my time in English, Johns Creek, or somewhere in the surrounding area. I specialize in cardiovascular disease, morbidity, and mortality. So if you want to learn how to live and survive, I can talk to you and build you out a plan. I'm kidding. Talk to your doctors about that. But just so that you guys know a little bit about what I do for a living. And so I make sure that I specialize in, like I said, cardiovascular morbidity and mortality, making sure that we can figure out how to make sure that people are functioning and running at their highest capacity. And obviously, as your next city council member, I want to work to serve you because, again, service is what I do. And I know that without a shadow of a doubt that Johns Creek is the best place to live, work, and raise a family. However, that as a homeowner and a mom, I have seen firsthand that there are some things that we can do better to move this community forward. And you have my commitment that as your next city council member, I'll work with our police officers, and our neighborhood groups to make sure that the crime wave that's plaguing other communities stays out of Johns Creek. And obviously, as your next city council member, I'll continue to fight for our arts center, to make sure that we build the town center finally. It has been long overdue, long delayed. And I'll make sure that we fight for the arts and that the Legacy Center is kind of the anchor of what drives that, and we can use that. But I'll also make sure that we have the best stormwater management tools possible to drive the city forward. But I promise to also keep your taxes low and fair and to make sure that everybody, no matter who they are, what party they belong to, gets a seat at the table with me. So thank you for your time, and I hope over the next couple of weeks to earn your thoughts, your prayers, and of course your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go straight to you while you're up there. I'm going to do that. Yeah. All right, the first question is around traffic. What are your thoughts about the various proposals to address traffic congestion at the intersection of State Bridge and Medlock Bridge? For example, a through you. Specifically, do you support the through you concept? And if so, have you thought about the impact on Johns Creek residents when they simply want to turn left at night to pick up a pizza?
So yes, I'm one of those people who try to turn left and pick up a pizza, and it is very hard to get out. However, the city council has already kind of decided that they like the Michigan U. And I seem to make a lot of those Michigan U-turns myself. One of the things I think that we need to be looking at when it comes to traffic, first and foremost, is making sure that we get cars off the roads. Because until we can get cars off the road, we can't reduce traffic. And so anybody who tells you differently is just leading you astray. So we need to work with our local businesses to find out if there's ways that we can reduce traffic by allowing them to flex work. So what we can do is we can lower the occupational tax for some of our local businesses to ensure that they allow their employees to work, let's say, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays they flex work from home. And so by doing that, it allows us to be able to have less cars on the street. Some of the other things that we can do to try to mitigate some of that traffic is to also possibly look at other options as to what we're doing as it relates to traffic. We need to make sure that we have more bicycle lanes, more sidewalks, because again, if people can walk and bike to work, there's less cars on the road. We also need to look at every possible option because again, if we're going to make sure that Johns Creek is expanding, whether we like it or not, this is not Mayberry. So we have to have the infrastructure set up and designed to do as such. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at every possible option for smart transportation, allowing there to be, certain incentives for people who decide to carpool together. So just making sure that we're looking at every single possible option that we have. Thank you.
Okay, Dilip, the same question. What are your thoughts about the various proposals to address traffic congestion at the intersection of State Bridge and Medlock? For example, a through you. Specifically, do you support the through you concept?
Thank you, Anne. This is an interesting question. Between all the 5 choices we have, through you, Michigan left, that's the lowest in the cost. And even the more than 4 seconds saving time. But let's look at it this way. Let the phase 1 complete. Let's look at the impact. Because not always the lowest one is the best choice. We have to go back and look at it as a combined or hybrid model. We got to look at those 2 other options too. Because, like I said, let's look at the phase 1. Once it's done, let's do the traffic study and where it takes us. Then we don't have to just stick to the through you, and let's evaluate the hybrid and combined option to see. It's little on the expensive side, but if the residents wants that and if there's more input, then we'll definitely consider that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm coming straight back to you, so stay there. All right, we're moving on to housing. This is a 3-part question. Describe what you believe affordable housing means in Johns Creek and what price point you believe is affordable. Do you want to see more affordable housing in Johns Creek? And if so, exactly how would you go about making that happen?
Interesting question, Ann. There's a different definitions for affordable housing. It depends on the city. Again, here, we need to go back and look at our infrastructure, schools, and see, do they support what kind of housing in there. So our comp plan says where the things can go in there. The town center, yes, we are planning few multi-houses, but even before we do anything in there, we need to go back and look at our infrastructure, traffic, do the study. Let's work the backwards, not from deciding that we're going to put the houses and then work towards if the infrastructure is going to support. When you say affordable housing, yes, we want the businesses to come into the Johns Creek, and their employees, they need a place to stay. But at the same time, we need to go back and look at, there is a character for the Johns Creek. We need to make sure we protect that. And again, infrastructure and traffic, those are the two bottlenecks. Let's work on those two to see how we can address those, then come back and look at the housing options. Thank you.
Okay, Lee, let me read the question. Describe what you believe affordable housing means in Johns Creek and what price point you believe is affordable. Do you want to see more affordable housing in Johns Creek? And if so, exactly how would you go about making that happen?
I love these long questions. Okay, so thank you, great question. So first and foremost, guys, let's talk about affordable housing for a second, because this can typically be a kind of ugly word. So when we think about affordable housing, and just so that you guys, let me give you guys a little reference point, it's typically, this is what we call like a wedge issue. This is used to typically divide people. Because at the end of the day, affordable housing is a word that we use to scare people typically. So let's be clear on that first and foremost. But I don't know anyone that's running for city council in Johns Creek that wants the type of affordable housing that I'm hearing on the street that they're being told. Nobody wants projects. Nobody wants Section 8 housing. That's not what anybody is proposing. So let's be clear first and foremost that that's not happening in Johns Creek. So let's just put that out there so we can put that to rest. So now let's look at real potential what affordable housing looks like. So I was talking to one of my employees today, Anna, and she's 25 years old. She's fresh out of college. She has a job. Her husband makes good money, and she wants to move to Johns Creek, but they're 25. And so she can't afford what I can afford. And so what we talked about is, can you afford $200,000? And so she was like, yeah, absolutely. So we have to determine as a community what that looks like. And I think that that's a great price point. But again, we as a community need to decide what that looks like, because, you know, I think it's a travesty that the people who serve this community, our police officers, our firefighters, our teachers, our other first responders, that they can't afford to live in the city that they serve. And that's truly it's just more than what we need to be dealing with. And so I think that when we look at that price point, that puts us in a better position to make sure that our police officers and firefighters, but again, is that the bottom? I don't know. Is that the top? Absolutely not in Johns Creek. But we need to make sure we do have affordable options to make sure that our police, our fire, our teachers, the people who serve this community diligently every day without fail have an option to live here, as well as our seniors. So thank you.
Okay. I'm going to do it to you again.
Wait till I get all the way back.
All right, this one is addressing some areas you both covered in your introduction. Please elaborate on your history of residence in the Johns Creek area, the area of your service to the Johns Creek community that you are most proud of, how you have contributed to building trust with all members of the Johns Creek community.
Okay, see if I can cover all that in 2 minutes. So first of all, again, I moved here in 2020 during the pandemic. And one of the things that I did immediately is I hit the ground running. And mind you, I've worked in this community for almost 18 years, so I'm not new to the community despite what they're probably telling you. I'm not new to the community, so let me be clear. So while I've not lived here very long, I have managed this community. I have been in this community and being active and involved since I moved here. I'm not one of those that waits. I get active and I get involved immediately. One of the things I've done just recently during the pandemic is that I provided 455 PPE kits to those communities that were most likely to be impacted by that. We also bought groceries for the communities, again, that are most likely to have been hit by the pandemic. So not only did we buy groceries, but we provided what we call victory gardens. And so not only did we give the food out, we didn't just give a handout, we made sure that they were able to continue to grow food, and they could do that from their very own tabletops in their houses. Some of the other things that we do, I live on the south side of Johns Creek, so on Saturdays we clean up Haynes Bridge, Old Alabama, and Nesbitt Ferry. Those are things that we do right here in this community, but like I mentioned to you before, I am a healthcare provider. So what happens is that I make sure that our seniors don't have to ration out their insulin like Ms. Jones was doing. I make sure that little boys who have asthma, whose families have been laid off due to COVID, don't have to worry about every single day if they have access to medication, because what I do is I work with our pharmacies, I work with our pharmaceutical companies to make sure that nobody gets left behind, because right now we have not expanded Medicaid. So we can do things every day in this community to take care of them, and that's what I've done since I've been here. Thank you.
Dylan, please elaborate on your history of residence in the Johns Creek area, the area of your service to the Johns Creek community that you are most proud of, how you have contributed to building trust with all members of the Johns Creek community.
Thank you, Ann. I just wanted to make sure you mentioned Johns Creek there, right? So I had to bring everything back into 2 minutes, whatever I said in 5 minutes. So I'm a resident of Johns Creek for 21 years. I'm actively involved. I'm currently serving on Town Center Advisory Committee, Recreational Parks Advisory Committee, and Executive Board Member and Treasurer for Johns Creek Arts Center, Executive Board Member and Treasurer for Arterial Nature Preserve, an Executive Board Member for Johns Creek Cricket Association. Apart from that, like I said in the opening statement, I mentor small business owners. I interact with them. 3 to 4 small business owners every week in the North Fulton area. At least I get to hear from them what are the bottlenecks, what the city needs to do to attract them. Prior to these things, I served on Construction Board of Appeals and Chattahoochee School Governance Council, where I worked with the Fulton County in bringing a greenhouse that never happened in any of the Fulton County schools. It's a $400,000 greenhouse, which they are using it for the coursework, even for the technical training for the transition into the work. Apart from these things, I'm a graduate of Leadership Johns Creek, Citizens Fire Academy, and Citizens Police Academy. So, serving on all these boards, I haven't missed a single meeting or single timeline. Any of the executive directors in all these boards can vouch for that. So, I'm involved, and I take the things serious, and I represent the community. When I say community, City of Johns Creek and the residents of Johns Creek, that's what I call my family in the community. Thank you.
Okay, Dylan. Moving on to the police. Our police chief is putting a renewed emphasis on community policing efforts such as Coffee with a Cop and Worth It Wednesdays. Do you support these initiatives, and do you feel community policing has value for the citizens of Johns Creek? Would you want to reimagine the police, and how?
I definitely support that. And I saw the positive feedback from the residents on Coffee with the Cops. So I attended a few of them. The residents come out and they share their inputs with the officers. So there should be more programs like that, get them involved. I know some people started talking about the Coffee with Cops as not as a big event or a deal, but it is. Residents wanted that and we provided that. And we need to have more programs like that and get the community involved in that. Most recent one, like if you look at past weekend, there was a cricket match between the police department and the fire department. That's like, they had to get practice for the 2 weeks. Nicole was there practicing with them too. So they were there. They enjoyed the match so much. So that's the kind of involvement we want to get our first responders to work with us and get into the community where we feel comfortable supporting them. Thank you.
Our police chief is putting a renewed emphasis on community policing efforts such as Coffee with a Cop and Worth It Wednesday. Do you support these initiatives, and do you feel community policing has value for the citizens of Johns Creek? Would you want to reimagine the police, and how?
Yes, I do think that it's a great program, and I truly believe in community policing. What we do know is that community policing works better than any type of policing, because what happens, especially when they live in the community that they serve, because they know the people who belong in the neighborhoods, they know who goes to the schools, they know who normally goes to this corner grocery store, who normally shops where. That's what you get when you do community policing. But I do think that it's a great program that we have, Coffee with a Cop. I wish more residents would get involved, but I think it just takes time. You know, the program is still fairly new, so it's just making sure that people get the word out. And not only that, but we've got to start trying to figure out how to rebuild a rapport with the community, because there are so many negative things that are being said about our police officers and all that, because not all cops are bad, not all cops are good, but there's the overwhelming amount of them, especially at Johns Creek, do a fantastic job. And so I think it's just overcoming the biases that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so building the trust with the community to understand that it's okay. And so it's something that I talk to my daughter about all the time. If you ever get misplaced from mommy, make sure you find a police officer. You know, it's a safe place. And so making sure that we instill that trust in our children and in our community, that this is still a safe person to go to, and rebuilding that. So I think Coffee with the Cop is a great idea. I think our chief is on the right idea with getting more involved and making sure that our police officers are out there, especially more bike police, because I think especially when you go to the parks and stuff to see them on the bikes, they can get off, they can talk faster. And so it just really does a lot to the community to see that they're active and they're engaged and they want to be out there. And so I think our police officers do a great job, and, you know, we need to give them, you know, all the praise that's due to them. So thank you.
Talking about a role on the council, you have other work and responsibilities. How much time do you believe you would need to dedicate to council business, and how would you manage this?
Well, I mean, think of, as with anything, what starts out as a part-time job really is a full-time job. And I think we go in thinking, oh, it's going to be 5 hours, but it's really like 50 hours every week. And so I think going in with the expectation that it's pretty much a full-time job. You know, you have to be able to do all the things that need to be done. And so in my mind, you activate immediately as if it's a full-time job. And so you make yourself ready and available. You know, even with the current work that I do, my employees know that, you know, I don't turn off my phone at 5 o'clock. If you need me, I'm available to you. So sometimes that's after hours, and unfortunately that's the situation that we're in. But I think just always being open and available, but just knowing that it's always going to be a lot of hard work and a lot of hours, despite what the, you know, what the pay says and what the hours that they tell you that it's going to be. But, you know, it's going to be a high demand position. So, you know, even if it does just say part-time. So just preparing yourself for that.
Okay, Dilip, you have other work and responsibilities. How much time do you believe you would need to dedicate to council business, and how would you manage this?
As I mentioned before, I'm already serving on so many committees. So I have like 3 buckets of time. One is for the family, one for the business, and one for the community service. That bucket is always there. So probably I may have to step down from some of those committees and focus more on the city council, but I would do this. It's not a full-time job, but it needs a commitment. It's not a paid job, okay? So I know someone was comparing it to Atlanta, what they pay $70,000 compared to what is paid in Johns Creek. We're not doing it for the money. We're not doing it for the salary. We are doing it for the community service. So just giving back to the community. I got so much from this community, family, education, and the education from my daughter. So it's time to give it back. So it's not the salaried position that I'm looking at. It's like service that I want to bring it back and represents the views of all the residents and look out for the betterment of City of Johns Creek. That's all I'm looking for, City of Johns Creek. Thank you.
Okay, Dilip, back to you. There are 2 questions here that are related. What are your political affiliations, and how can we be sure that your political affiliations will take a back seat to serving the Johns Creek community and issues that go beyond party politics?
I'm not affiliated with any parties. I'm a resident of Johns Creek for more than 20 years. I've been serving the residents of Johns Creek and serving on various committees and organizations within the City of Johns Creek. My only focus is the City of Johns Creek and representing the views of the residents of Johns Creek and betterment of City of Johns Creek. That's the only focus. Only focus is City of Johns Creek. I don't have any affiliation with any party lines. Thank you.